So as I said, I'm Adrienne, and I'm from the Chrome security team. And today I'm going to be talking to you about how to ask for superpowers, meaning all these cool new APIs that we've been talking about throughout the day. So I travel a lot too, just like Alex. Last week, I was in the Sydney office talking to the Chrome apps team. A few weeks before that, I was in London. And because I travel so much, I like to try to stay in touch with my family back at home. And I usually do that with Hangouts in Chrome. So when I want to video chat with my husband or maybe my dog who doesn't really know what's going on, I use Hangouts. And Hangouts relies on get user media in Chrome in order to get access to camera and microphone. And as Alex was talking about, it'd be great to be able to get things like flight updates and gate change notifications from a website using things like service workers and push messaging. And so all of these cool new user experiences are being enabled by all the new APIs that are coming to the web. So we've talked about a few of these today, and even more will be coming out. We've got notifications, and Bluetooth is in the works, things about persistent storage and background sync, et cetera. And all of these are really awesome, and I hope to see them used in all of your websites. But we've also got to deal with the fact that there are possible negative user experiences that could come along with these APIs as well. So for example, I'm one of those people who doesn't always plug in my phone, and sometimes on day 3, I'm like going around my office mates' computers looking for USB cables for power. So I don't really want websites to be draining my battery more than they really need to. So something like push messaging, while really awesome, could also end up draining battery faster than you like. Or notifications are great when you want to find out about an email or a tweet or something like that, but not so great when you're getting 15 of them in a minute to tell you all about some new product you should buy. And of course, no one really wants their camera turning on at an unsurprising time. So as a community, we face a challenge here. So on one hand, we have these new superpowers, these new APIs, that we want to be able to use to build great experiences. But on the other hand, we have responsibility to users to make sure that we're respecting their privacy, their security, and in general, their desire to have control over their devices. And also, one of the things that I really love about the web is that I can go to just about any website and feel pretty confident that at the end of the session, I'm not going to have any problems with privacy and security. I can go to little-known websites, I can try new things out, and I don't really have to be worrying about privacy and security because Chrome is doing it for me. And I feel that's our job as developers to take users' concerns into account so that users don't have to become security experts to use the internet. So our answer to this is by putting more effort into Chrome's permission model. So when I say a permission, what I'm talking about is you go to use the notification API, and a thing pops up to ask the user, hey, do you want to let a website use the notification API? And there are 2 main goals we have with this permission system. The first goal is, of course, to respect user choices and user control over their devices. And on the other hand, we also want to make it easy for developers to be able to use this permission system so that it flows well and works well with your websites. And so I'm going to be talking today about some of the things that are coming now or coming soon in Chrome with respect to the permission model. And then after that, I'm also going to be discussing a set of different tips that you can use to make your websites work better with this permission model. I'd also like to clarify that everything that I'm talking about today, pretty much, is stuff that Chrome is doing. It's not standards track or specifications type work. Those are the APIs. I'm talking about the UI and the user experience that surrounds the APIs as part of the browser. So as Alex briefly alluded to earlier, the foundation of this model is that HTTPS is going to be required for most new APIs if they touch on things that are security-related, privacy-related, or if they could be abused. And not only will this apply to new APIs as they come into existence, but we're also trying to figure out how to backport this to older APIs. So for example, get user media is shipping today. As I mentioned earlier, Hangouts uses it. And right now, you can use it over both HTTP and HTTPS. We're working on figuring out a transition plan to make it HTTPS only in the future. Now, let me explain why we think this is important. Let's say that I'm using Twitter, and I give Twitter the ability to take photos with my computer, to post a picture of myself or my dog or something. I want Twitter to be able to use that ability. I don't want my ISP and the people around me at the coffee shop to also gain that ability at the same time. And HTTPS gives you the guarantee that Twitter will be the only one getting access to this privilege. And the flip side of that is integrity. Like, say you have something like notifications. Some Wi-Fi provider might get it into their head that a great way to monetize is to send lots of notifications, advertising things to people. That's going to hurt your website too, because people are going to associate these low quality notifications with your website, which isn't what you want. So I want to acknowledge that some people have found the path to adopting HTTPS a little rocky, so don't panic. It's probably easier and faster and cheaper than you think. And later this afternoon, my colleague Chris Palmer is going to talk all about all the great things that have happened over the recent year and coming with TLS. All right, so now you've got your HTTPS website. So the first thing you're going to need to do is to request permission to get access to the API. So in the past, and in fact currently unstable, what this looks like is an info bar at the top of the screen that is asking the user whether to grant or deny a certain privilege for that website. As you can see, it pushes the content area down. So we got feedback from developers that info bar was being missed by users. They weren't really seeing it. So we're working on a new thing called a permission bubble. And this hopefully will get more user attention, and users will notice it more easily. So you can play with it if you turn on that flag. Or we're also going to be starting to roll it out experimentally soon in the coming months. We're still playing around with things like how to get focus right. Another problem that we had with the info bar model was that if people asked for multiple permissions, they would end up getting stacked on top of each other like this, which is pretty ugly. And if you get a few of them, it starts taking up a lot of space. So the permission bubbles will coalesce permissions that are asked for very close together in time. Users can still say yes or no to each of these individually. Another thing we're doing is looking at completely new ways to ask for permission instead of just a binary yes or no answer. So this is an example from Chrome 40 for the Chrome apps USB API. So instead of just asking the user yes or no, like can this access USB devices, it lets the user choose which USB devices should be available to the app. Now, my colleagues are also working on prototypes of similar types of things for things like the web Bluetooth API. So you should expect to be seeing this for web permissions too. All right, so let's say that the user has made their decision. They've either granted or denied the ability to use a permission. People might want to change their minds later. We were actually asking, we ran through some scenarios with a group of users a few weeks ago, asking people whether they would say yes or no to permissions in certain circumstances. And some people expressed hesitation because they didn't know how to control these privileges. For example, this person said, and that's why I wanted to decline. I don't know how to undo. If I knew how to undo, I would say yes. So to address this, we're working on better in-page controls. I'm going to show a demo here. By the way, I'm using the same extremely, if I could switch to the projector, that'd be great. The same extremely fresh version of Chrome that Alex was using. So please cross your fingers for me. All right. So here I've got a website that's asking for access to geolocation. Thanks, it's reminding me that I'm at my own talk. Useful, right? OK, so I'm going to go ahead and allow this. Now, if you click on the lock, it opens this up the in-page controls. So this lets the user check on the security and the privacy of the connection. So you can see at the top, it's using HTTPS. So it says your connection to this site is private. And it also gives you the ability to see any of the non-default permission settings. So this one has location, because I just granted that. And from right here, you can toggle between allow and block if you want. So now I've blocked that. Back to the slides, please. Now, another thing that comes up is usage. I mentioned earlier that I'm really paranoid about battery life. Other people are concerned about things like how much disk space a website or app is taking up. Or some people are worried. They don't want to use any websites that are going to be constantly tracking their location. So our answer to that is building some of this information into site settings. I'm going to show you some mocks of our vision in this space. But just so you know, you can see some of what I'm about to talk about in Chrome 40, although it's not feature complete yet, which is why I'm showing mocks today. So if you go into site settings, you can search for a page or pick a specific permission. Here, I'll do notifications as an example. And it'll show you all the websites that have been granted access to this or been blocked. And for the ones that have access, it'll show you when it was last used. So you can see, for example, who's recently been sending notifications on your device. And if you search for or click on a specific website, you can see the history of how it's been using its privileges. You can see here in this example, it's been using geolocation. You'll also be able to see information about battery usage and data storage. And you can do things like stop or delete the data if you think that's important and you're trying to reclaim some space. So I recognize that those features that I was just talking about in site settings are not things that people are going to use every day. On an everyday basis, people want things to just work. So let me give you 2 examples. The first is Virgin America. You're traveling, you've got 10 gate changes in 10 minutes. You probably want all 10 notifications in 10 minutes telling you all about this, because this is important to you. On the other hand, let's say someone wants to send you 15 advertisements in 15 minutes. You probably don't want that. So how do you distinguish between these 2 cases? Well, in the positive user engagement case, the user really likes that website. Examples of a user indicating that they like a website might include something like it shows up in their history a lot because they visit it often. Maybe they've bookmarked it. Maybe they've added it to their home screen. Or maybe they have a login for it. So what we're thinking about doing is tying these signs of positive user engagement to thresholds for permissions that aren't privacy sensitive, but are more just annoying. So you might be able to send more notifications, have a higher quota for storage, or if they're a vibration API, vibrate more times in a short period of time. So we want to be able to sort of reward this good user experience. This is still experimental, by the way. This isn't something that we've nailed down precisely and something that we haven't launched yet. I'm mentioning it really early now because I would love to get feedback from you on what you think about these ideas. And if you could come talk to me at the booth or come to the panel with questions about it, I would love to hear your thoughts on it. We also will be recognizing user discontent. By this, I mean, I mentioned that there are 2 cases, the Virgin America case, which I like a lot, and the case of the sort of spammy website. And we want to be able to recognize these negative cases as well. So for example, users might consistently say 99% of users say no when a website asks for a permission. Or people are saying yes, but then they're going and turning it off later. These are signs that users aren't very happy with that experience. And so in these cases, we're thinking about things like lowering thresholds, or maybe not even prompting users. So again, this is an idea that we haven't exactly fully decided on the mechanics of it, but I'm again giving you an early heads up. All right, so now I'm going to talk about what you can do to build a good user experience around our permission system. First, I want to motivate that users don't just click yes, yes, yes when you ask them for things. People do think about and make real decisions when asked permission questions. So here are some quotes from users about things that they've considered when they're trying to decide whether to grant a permission. So what type of information is it going to show? Are you interested in it? Do you trust the trust source? So some researchers at UC Berkeley asked a group of iOS users to share the settings in their phones so they could see what apps they had granted or not granted geolocation information to. And we found that it differed a lot depending on, or they found that it differed a lot depending on the specific app. So you can see that for some apps, like Maps, almost 100% of users were willing to grant it geolocation. But on the other end of the spectrum, fewer than half of users were willing to grant it to some apps like SoundHound and Shazam. So the point I'm trying to make here is that the benefit that users feel they're going to get from a specific permission depends on what you tell them the value proposition is. So the first tip that we have is to provide clear value by timing the permission request in such a way that the user can connect the permission request with the feature. All right, so I'm going to do another demo here. Can I get on the camera again, please? So yes, you may recognize it. This is the same demo that Alex was using earlier. So let's see how this goes. OK, so let's say that I'm traveling, and my flight's canceled, and now I'm trying to book another flight. So OK, I click on the button to bring up the page to book a flight. It now immediately pops up the question of whether I'd like Polyair to be able to send notifications. This isn't really a great time to ask about that. I don't really know what's going to happen if I say yes. So I'm going to swat it away. So let's say I'm trying to go from SFO to LAX. All right, we're going to take the Millennium Falcon. All right, here again, it pops up another permission request. And this one's a little bit better. You can see that it's at least tied to some feature on the page, but in my opinion, it's still not the best version yet. So let's say no to that. Now here, I'm going to click on the Notify About Flight Delays button. Now here, it's very clear that you've just turned on notifications for flight delays. So the user is going to be persuaded to click on Allow here to say yes, because they understand what they're going to get. Back to the slides, please. So for some permissions, like notifications, it's pretty easy to do this well today, in my opinion. For other types of permissions, it's maybe a little bit harder. So for example, for geolocation, you can't tell whether your website already has the permission before you try to use it. So some people on my team are working on something called the Permissions API. Don't copy this code because it's currently a spec. It hasn't been implemented yet. But it's coming, and you'll start seeing an implementation probably in 41. But the idea here is that it'll let you query to find out whether your website has a given permission or a set of permissions, so that you know whether trying to use it is going to pop up a permission request or not, to allow you to time your permission requests better. So for example, if you knew this about geolocation, you could do different behavior. You could show very localized stores. You could show all stores in California if you don't have the permission. Just use IPGeo instead. So it'll give you more options. All right, so the next thing you need to note is that you need to ask with a document. And this pertains specifically to service workers. If you try to request a permission when there's no documents open, there's nowhere to show the permission request. So don't do this. So I'm going to show you with a good and a bad example. A good example is, in the main document, in response to some event, like toggling, request the permission there. A bad example would be when a background sync event fires from within your service worker trying to request permission. But the page might be closed. There's nowhere to show a permission request. So you will not have a good time. Do not do it this way. All right. The third thing I want to talk about is handling user rejection. So what I mean is when a user says no to your permission request, please don't break your whole website. The user might see that it breaks the feature, and then at a later time, go back and enable the permission. So I'm going to show an example of what that looks like. So here, this imaginary store is going to give you 3 options of ways to give you information about store openings. So if you click on the toggle for the first one, that opens up a notifications prompt asking about desktop notifications. So let's say I have, for whatever reason, changed my mind in this intervening second and click block. The thing you can do as a website developer here is gray out disable the feature. So here, the rest of the website still works. You can still do email alerts or Facebook alerts or however you want, but the notification part specifically has been disabled. Now here's how you can check the states, particularly for notifications. There are two ways to check the states, the permission state. The first is on load. You can check the value of notification.permission. And then update the state of the toggle based on whether it's, for example, already disabled for your domain. The other is, let's say someone, you want to trigger the request. You do notification.requestPermission, and the callback will take as an argument a permission parameter. And either way, you're able to then check the value of the permission, either the value on load or the value after you request it, and update your UI accordingly. And last but not least, you also have to remember that you need to handle revocation. So let's say a user grants a permission, but then for whatever reason disables it later. This might mean, or it even could just be that their device breaks. You don't know. So make sure that when available, take advantage of both your success callbacks and your error callbacks. So here's another example of that. Here, this is currently in the middle of recording audio using getUserMedia. So I've previously granted the permission. But now I'm going to take it back. And the next time the user goes to click the record button, the error callback is going to fire. And you can see in the console at the bottom, say that it's a permission denied error. So this is an example of showing how you can pass in both a success callback followed by an error callback. And in the error callback, you can say disable the feature and update the UI state. So hopefully, we're able to help you as developers build good permissions user experiences. Because I want you all to be able to use these really awesome APIs that are coming out. And as part of that, you need to make sure that you're justifying to users both why you should be able to get the permission and also why you should keep it. And as I said before, we want to help you do this. So we'd love feedback, and also, as these will be posted later, all of the demos and the code examples are on my GitHub. Thank you.